Check out this text box. Deal 5 damage to target creature or player. And how about this? I'll tell you it's an instant. Now I want you to evaluate it. Figure out how good this card is, and whether or not it's playable. I'll give you a moment. Alright, what did you decide? There's an almost certain chance you said something along the lines of, I have no idea, what's its mana cost? And yeah, that's my point exactly. Mana costs make or break cards. Some of the most unplayable draft garbage ever printed might be format warping boogeymen if you were to knock 3 or 4 mana off of their price tag. On the other side, imagine how terrible a card like Ragavan would be if the Prodigal Monkey was 2 in a red instead of 1 red. Point being, mana costs are everything. One may expect then that 1 mana cards are incredibly limited in their power level and scope of what they can do. On paper, that tracks. It's the lowest a card can cost without being free entirely. But Wizards of the Coast's research and development team are only human, so oftentimes what's considered appropriate for the mana cost gets a little goofy. I found this out firsthand while looking at Brightglass Gear Hulk. I knew I wanted him for a deck, so I started doing a little bit of restructuring to play around his tutor up to 1 mana artifacts, enchantments, or creatures enters the battlefield clause. This took me down a rabbit hole, so today, I want to talk about what I found out about what 1 mana gets you in Magic. So let's say you want to make some resources. For the time being, we'll start with the least valuable, that being life. Well, 1 mana will get you any of the 4 different Soul Sisters effects in the game. Each of these nets you life whenever creatures enter the battlefield, which really adds up if you play them early. Authority of the Consuls does a similar job, but while also slowing down your opponent's aggressive threats. If you'd rather be the aggressor instead, Serra Ascendant is a whopping 6/6 flying lifelinker on turn 1 in Commander. No matter which angle you gain life from though, Cleric class, another great 1-drop, will make sure you're getting extra bang for your life gain buck. And that's not even the half of it. Would you like to get paid off for getting that life? Well, we can do that for 1 mana too. Check this out. Okay, Ocelot Pride. Makes you tokens on your end step for life gain, and then doubles them if you have the city's blessing. Speaker of the Heavens can tap to make you 4/4 angels if you're 7 life or more over your starting life total. Again, all of this, una minuto. But that's life gain, I hear you say. It's basically a non-resource. Show us something real. Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about mana then. Mana dorks make the world go round, and although they're mostly locked to green, the various 1 mana elves of our game would love to make your turn 2 into a turn 3. If that's not good enough for you, well then Birds of Paradise does this while making you a rainbow mana instead of a green mana. If you're looking to get some more utility out of your ramp, Delighted Halfling will put you in a position to keep counter magic off of your legendary creatures. Next up are the Hierarch twins, Noble and Ignoble. They're in slightly different colors than each other, but they both give out an Exalted trigger, making them especially valuable in any Voltron deck. And then there's Sol Ring, not only going mana positive itself, but also slotting into any deck regardless of the color identity. If instead of getting it back in installments, you'd rather your mana come in 1 large burst, that's what she said, then 1 mana provides here too. Dark Ritual is one of the most iconic cards in all of Magic, and it's for good reason. All on its own, it accelerates your turn 2 into a turn 4, letting you get a 4 or 5 mana commander online early with very little support. Blue and black get High Tide and Bubbling Muck respectively. They both allow the basic land types of their respective colors to tap for double mana until the end of the turn. This often leads to some pretty huge storm wins out of nowhere. Carpet of Flowers shows up here too. It gives green decks a big burst of mana on one of their main phases for each tapped island an opponent controls, kind of like a repeatable color hoser version of Mana Geyser. Now you're getting greedy. You're going, but Blood Artist, what about the greatest resource of all? And I go, friendship? And you say, no you idiot, I'm talking about card draw. I'm talking about 50 cards in my hand at this very moment. Okay, I may have something here for you too then. Of course you have the Ponder family of products, right? A litany of cantrips, both instants and sorceries, that help you dig, sculpt, mold, and otherwise change your hand around 1,000 different little ways. But these aren't card advantage, they're card neutral, and you want something repeatable. Mystic Remora, otherwise known as Little Ristic Study that nobody pays for, is just 1 mana to draw a card whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell. Nobody's paying that for. But that's blue, they draw cards in their sleep. Well, what about this? Ooh, the effect's in white now, stinky. Esper Sentinel is very similar to Mystic Remora, but it has a body and the tax paid is 1 instead of 4. But you can raise it by increasing the card's power. If you're a twisted psychopath who just wants to Joker post and watch the world burn, you can use Skull Clamp to sacrifice all of your 1 toughness creatures to draw a bajillion cards out of nowhere. A totally and completely reasonable Magic card that has never broken a format ever. Ragavan, by popular demand from the one modern player at your LGS, steals your opponent's cards while also making you treasures, because that's balanced. I think it's time yet again to reflect on how all of this is just 1 mana. Card advantage can win games on its own, and some of these effects would be right at home on a 2 or 3 mana card, but nope! 1 whole smackaroo! Take it or leave it! Oh? What's that you say, personified comment section? That's all been establishing our own boards, and surely there's no good ways to answer our opponent's stuff for a measly 1 doubloon? Quite the contrary, my friend made of straw. Quite the contrary. As far as removal goes, you already knew about some of these cards. Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile are premium stuff. They both exile a creature for just 1 white. Although the latter of the two is starting to fall off in popularity due to it giving someone a land, it's hard to overstate what a blowout it is to take down an indestructible 10 mana Eldrazi Titan for a single mana. But okay, white gets good removal, we know this, so what else is there? Blue actually gets in on the action too, more than you'd expect. Rapid Hybridization and Pongify do their grim color pie warping work, and compensate you by pretending a little funny guy makes up for wiping out your commander for the 13th time this game. Chain of Vapor hits any non-land, and starts a fun game of, are we throwing this back and forth, or am I blowing you out of the water without issue? Witness Protection is happy to make someone's key creatures into totally legitimate businessmen who have never done a crime or had an effect in their entire lives. Red Elemental Blast hits most of the good permanents in the game, because, you know, blue, while Bushwhack is a decent fight spell because it can choose not to be a fight spell. Black gets a myriad of kill spells that are 1 or even fewer mana, so I'll just make special mention of Tragic Slip here. Creatures are dying all the time, so this regularly does what white exile spells do without significant drawbacks, being get around indestructible. But this is mostly creature hate, so what do we have for other permanent threats? Haywire Might, my beloved, eats 1 rings and Theros gods while giving you life, I guess? Why? Anyways, Nature's Claim only destroys instead of exiling, but it's an instant and doesn't telegraph itself as much as the funny bug does. Also, can we take a second to talk about Static Prison? This card didn't get much commander attention when Modern Horizons 3 dropped, and that's a shame. 1 mana, lock any permanent, regardless of its mana cost, in baby jail for at least 3 turns. That's an eternity in Commander. This may as well be delay, but for the things that have managed to resolve and become a nuisance on the board. What if you want to catch things on their way to resolving instead? An offer you can't refuse. Boom, one of the best counterspells in the game. Any non-creature, gone, reduced to atoms. You didn't even telegraph it, you just left open a mana confluence and someone paid the iron price for it. Swan Song harkens back to the philosophy that blue can do anything for basically free as long as they give someone a silly little dude for it. But Blardist, I want to stop creatures. Okay. So Abjure is quite frankly a wild magic card. Counter anything, no restrictions, 1 mana, but you sacrifice a blue permanent. This doesn't say non-token, like everyone wishes Force of Denial did. It's just anything blue, meaning it's relatively easy to chuck a token into the Blind Eternities to firmly dunk on your opponent for daring to resolve a Displacer Kitten. Bad Flicker player, bad. But maybe your problem is in the graveyard already. Perhaps you have a friend who partakes in the looping of a certain gray merchant. No problem. 1 mana is their worst enemy. Grafdigger's Cage makes the poor Asphedelian unable to enter the battlefield at all, or be cast from the grave. Okay, but maybe they're using a certain god of scarabs to make copies of him. What then? Well, Sentinel Totem can just wipe out all graveyards on its own. Relic of Progenitus can, on the other hand, bully single cards over and over until it's time to sacrifice itself to nuke some graves. It even refunds you a card when it explodes. Deathrite Shaman can snipe out key threats in response to them being targeted, while also gaining you advantage in the form of mana or damage. Small tangent here. Silver bullets are usually bad. You are making a called shot against a strategy you may or may not be playing against. But some of these graveyard hate cards feel like they're not giving up any opportunity cost at all and completely dominate graveyard decks. Good for them. Oh, and if you're the one that wants to be taking things out of the graveyard, guess what? 1 mana options for that too. Phyrexian Reclamation can fish creatures back into your hand over and over, as long as you're willing to pay some more life and mana each time you use it. Vat of Rebirth stores counters when creatures die, and when you have 4, you can spend them to bring back a creature. Reanimate does this, but only once. However, its target goes straight to the battlefield and without any restriction on what you grab. No, paying life isn't a restriction. So now your favorite creature is back from the dead. Cool. Let's set him up with some equipment to make him nice and scary. Tarian's Soul Cleaver is a 1 mana equipment that gives the wielder vigilance and a +1/+1 counter whenever a creature or artifact dies. This is symmetrical, it doesn't say you control, so it pays you off for your own aristocrats shenanigans and treasures, as well as any across the table as well. Shadow Spear is a lot of text for the cost, giving you +1/+1, trample, lifelink, and enabling you to shred hexproof and indestructible on demand. Commander's Plate is a 3/3 boost that also grants an array of color protections. Then we have Colossus Hammer, a massive power bump of 10 so long as you're okay with losing flying. If you're worried about equip costs, don't be. Sigarda's Aid, yes another 1-drop, equips any and all of these for free when they hit the board. If combat strategies aren't quite your forte, then there's still a lot for you in 1-mana cards. Maybe you're a fan of Burn, in which case, Iridescent Vine Lasher is awesome. Whenever a land enters on your board, burn an opponent for 1. But you can also pay 2 mana whenever you cast him to make a copy. These pings start to add up really fast, especially with fetch lands. Cataract Parasite makes a huge impact on the game, damaging opponents every time they draw a card. If you'd prefer life loss over damage, then Bloodchief Ascension is pretty hard to beat. On each end step, it gets a counter if an opponent has lost 2 or more life that turn. After it has 3 or more quest counters, every single time a card is put into an opponent's graveyard, you drain that player for 2. This is pretty strong against any deck, but it immediately puts a stop to any self-milling. It triggers off of each individual card, not each instance of multiple cards entering the graveyard. Sometimes you'd wish your bigger, more mana-heavy investments came with a little bit of protection. Your cheapest spells can do that for them too, like Mother of Runes. She can give herself or another creature protection from any color for a turn in response to removal, or to get through blockers. Giver of Runes, on the other hand, can't protect herself, but gives you access to colorless protection in exchange. Skrelv Defector Might does a pretty solid impression of these cards too, granting hexproof as well as unblockable from a specified color. Ephemerate and the other 1-mana flicker spells will take targeted removal off of your valuable creatures, coupled with giving you a redo on their enters the battlefield clauses. If you need to get an attacker through the line, Emerge Unscathed will grant a creature protection for a specified color for the turn, and then on your next upkeep will give you a free second cast of itself. Protect my guy now, make him hard to block later, fantastic for Voltron. Okay, I think we've done enough beating around the bush. They say save the best for last, so I did. 1 mana has an incredible ability to tutor cards out from your deck. Magic players have always had to find ways to fight the variance beast, but in Commander, this issue is compounded many times over. Going from a 60-card deck, where you can play 4 copies of any one card, to an 100-card deck where you can only play 1 of each card, leads to variance ruling the day. Tutors tell variance to go pound sand, and let you decide to simply take what you need from the library. This is a pretty valuable effect, and you'd expect them, in the abstract, to be a bit pricey on the mana end. But nope! Arguably some of the best of these effects are all 1 mana. If you need to find a land, Crop Rotation will let you sacrifice any you currently have in play to grab one from your deck and plop it down, turning utility lands into instants. Expedition Map plays a similar role for those of us not playing green. Let's say instead you need a creature. Worldly Tutor is going to get you one to the top of your library at instant speed. If you're especially hungry for this effect, Sylvan Tutor does a very similar job but at sorcery speed, and for $40. For the Spellslingers in the audience, Mystical Tutor can do the same as Worldly, but for an instant or sorcery. His sorcery speed cousin is Personal Tutor, which only grabs sorceries itself. God, if I say the word sorcery one more time, it's gonna lose all meaning. Anyways, Red gets Gamble, a sorcery. Ugh. This grabs any card and puts it directly into your hand, which is incredible, but then you discard a card at random. You will remember every single time this card fails you, and those instances will pile up over time and drive you to slowly hate it. Mark my words. Good card though. If you want another card that tutors something directly to your graveyard, Entomb is what you're looking for. This can set up incredibly nasty reanimator turns without giving your opponents a chance to untap and respond with graveyard hate. Enlightened Tutor is maybe my favorite of the bunch, getting any artifact or enchantment to the top of your library, which feels almost too powerful for how many great and diverse effects these card types have. If top of the library is too slow for you, and the artifact you need is an equipment, then Steel Shaper's Gift is amazing, like Demonic Tutor, but for Voltron strategies. If all of these more nuanced cards seem too balanced for you, then gravitate towards black. They get Vampiric Tutor and Imperial Seal. These are both expensive cards, in dollars, but offer the game's premium options when it comes to finding pieces. And of course, it goes without saying at this point, all of this is only a single mana. When players have issues casting spells efficiently, a lot of the time, it's because the density of big mana value cards in their deck is too high. After identifying this comes pushback, sometimes an insistence that there's nothing to be done about it because the cards in their deck are irreplaceable by cheaper ones. I hope I demonstrated here that this is far from the case. Getting resources, threats, synergies, and removal in your 1-mana slots isn't especially difficult, and that's unlikely to change. Power creep dictates that, for better or for worse, mana costs will come down over time. So, even though it only grabs permanents, I think I'll be sleeving up Breakglass Gearhulk in many decks to come. As always, I really appreciate the YouTube pleasantries. Liking, commenting, subscribing, they all really help out, but especially commenting. I want to hear about your favorite wacky 1-drops and all of the cards that I totally blanked on. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.